Hi, so this is part two of embracing and integrating my shadow. So, as I was saying, I was forced to redo my first Holy Communion catechism. And sure enough, at school, this very lovely lady, Mrs. Matthias, she was the catechism teacher. I redid it with her, and I remember before it, I think there was like a few of us, probably like maybe 11 or 12 or something, 13 of us who did it. And then the second time around, it was just me and one other kid. But it was cool because, I got deeper into the knowledge of the catechism, of the Bible, of the Christ and everything. She was a very good teacher. She really was a devout Christian and a real one, not these fake people. But that moment marked like a turning point for me where I was like, oh, okay, so people are fake in the name of Christ. So I said to my dad one time, I was like, why on earth do we go to church if people are so fake? What is this? What is this about? I'm like, I'm done with this. I'm not interested in going to church with those people because those people are hypocrites and they're racist. How can you be a Christian and be racist towards white people? Yes, I know white people have been racist towards black people for centuries, but she was being racist towards white people and towards me. She was being prejudiced towards me because of my association with white people. Right. So I was just like, this is guck. And then my dad was like, no, we go to church because the community must see you as being part of their society. And I was like, I don't want to associate with these people. I don't care. I don't care. But anyway, so I was at boarding school. So I've been at boarding school my whole life. My whole primary and high school was at boarding school. So at my boarding school, these questions now are like percolating inside me and I'm pissed off, right? And I'm just like, screw these people. And I hate fakeness. I hate it. Okay, I do not tolerate it. I feel like I have a physical aversion to hypocrisy and fakeness. I feel like I do. Okay, so I'm at school and we were taught Greek and Roman ancient history as well as ancient Egyptian history. Okay, and if you study the history of ancient Greece and Rome and ancient Egypt, you know that the gods and goddesses of their civilization are very central to life there, right? Like they'll invoke this god or this goddess at any particular moment based on what's going on, because these gods and goddesses rule and influence different aspects of life. You know what I'm saying? Like at childbirth, you will pray to Mother Isis so that you can have a smooth delivery and that your child will be healthy. And if you look at the Hippocratic oath that doctors take, Hippocrates, the father of modern medicine, even though we know that the Greeks and the Romans learned everything. Well, the Romans learned from the Greeks and the Greeks learned from the Egyptians. And then the Egyptians, they learned from the Aksumites and the Sudanese. Anyway, we all know that, the Greeks, they got their knowledge from Africa. Anyway, so in the Hippocratic Oath, it starts by saying, I vow to Apollo, which is, he's the god of the sun, but the sun itself is Helios, or Phoebus. Or wait, Phoebus drives Helios around in a chariot, but Apollo governs that whole story of the sun. And his sister Artemis governs the moon. But also, Apollo governs healing, but the god Asclepius is the actual physician. But I think Apollo gives him the knowledge. Okay, so Apollo's like the top god when it comes to healing. What's interesting that Apollo is the god of the sun and healing is that in the Vedic religion of ancient India, well, modern day India anyway, because Hinduism, it's not actually called Hinduism. They don't refer to themselves as Hindu. They're called Hindu because the British came across the Indus River, and that's where India, which is not India for them, they call themselves Bharat. That's why you have the Mahabharata. It's the great story of India. Anyway, Surya, the king of the sun, the god of the sun, is also the god of healing. Isn't that interesting? And if you're sick, you meditate to the sun in Vedic cosmology and you will get better. Anyway, so if so this is it shows you how they will invoke the different gods, depending on what's going on, right, in their lives. So I really got into this, and my father had a book by Robert Graves in his library of Greek history. I mean, Greek mythology, which is basically Greek history in many respects up until a certain point. But anyway, because the Iliad and the Odyssey is also there. So I read this compilation of Greek myths and legends, and I was just like, yes, this is a cosmology I can get behind. These are gods and goddesses I can relate to. Because after my experience with these Roman Catholics, right, and then just also the theological inconsistencies for me, that I found happening in Christianity, made me feel like I could relate much more to the Greek gods and goddesses, right? And so I really started getting into that, like just understanding, and then obviously reading also about ancient Egyptian. But I didn't have as much access to the ancient Egyptian gods and goddesses and their stories as I did, because I mean, I had this thick ass book by Robert Graves and I was just devouring it. And then I read the Iliad and the Odyssey as well. And so the goddess that I became most affiliated to, or the one that I found myself having the greatest affinity towards, was Athena, who's the goddess of knowledge, wisdom, and strategic warfare. And then that's why I have this little owl tattoo here, because it's an honor of Athena. Her symbol is the owl, which, as we all know, is a symbol of wisdom. But also, if you look at the owl, it's like a stealth fighter. It's like swoops and gets its prey completely silent, and it's gone, right? And I like owls. I love owls. I'm also a night person. I like the night. So there was a lot of similarities, but the knowledge and wisdom aspect very much resonated with me, because I am someone who, I think I could even say I pride myself with being someone who pursues knowledge, right? And this is what this is about. It's the fact that the truest knowledge, like how Apollo says at his temple in Delphi, is to know thyself, to be true to yourself, to thine own self be true to. Yeah, so sorry, thine own self be true is from Shakespeare, from Hamlet. Know thyself is the motto on Apollo's temple in Delphi, okay, in Greece. So knowing yourself is the depth of knowledge. And all spiritual cultures will tell you the same thing across the world. Self-knowledge is the knowledge, right? And so, after getting very much in touch with the ancient Greek mythology, I then started looking broader into spirituality, because I was like, what is going on this planet? Like, what are we, And then I found this book called Magic. I think it's called Practical Magic with the K, by Amber K. So that was in the library in my high school. And so I started reading that book. But at my primary school, we also used to do Shakespeare. And if you read Shakespeare, he alludes a lot to the Roman and the Greek gods and goddesses. So I find Shakespeare absolutely fascinating, especially like if you read them, A Midsummer Night's Dream. It's so interesting because it's set in Athens. So they allude to these gods and goddesses, but they are also part of the story of the Athenians. And I mean, you have Theseus, who's getting married to Queen Hippolyta, right? So already, like, you're in the Greek story, but it's very much happening in a sort of modern Elizabethan world, you know. Anyway, Midsummer Night's Dream, very cool. And then you've got other stories where, there's a lot of magic and a lot of like allusions to the different gods and goddesses. So yes, so I read. So then now I come across Wicca, which is what magical practice is called in some circles, from this book by Amber K, Practical Magic, and that was very illuminating.